chat. Keep it alive through these lines I write. I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling them flares. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch the scenario. My stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio once again with your host Nick Burnaby, here with my co-host DB here on UCY.TV. How's it going, man?
I'm doing good, man. I feel like we're in the lion's den here. We got all these helicopter sounds overhead all the time, and who knows what the hell's going on. They're preparing like usual. I know when I'm up at my mom's right by a military base, there's like non-stop airplanes going back and forth, and I know it's just like non-stop.
Yeah, man. I mean, there's almost a helicopter flying over my place at like all times. It's insane. Like there's literally 3 in the air right now. You know, it's like, God, man. They're like a flight path right over my house. That's what it seems like anyway.
Yeah.
So we got a bunch of crazy stories going on today and this week. You know, this is our final show of the week, and make sure you guys tune in on Fridays too and listen to Levon's show. It's our 3rd show of the week, but it's not you and me. It's our friend Levon that's does a little bit different type of a show. Get away from this, you know, bad political stuff that we're always talking about, which kind of sucks. So you always got to have a little bit of positive going on. So make sure you guys tune into that show on Friday, same time, and then make sure you bookmark UCY.TV and check out all the other time slots, all the other hosts, a bunch of good journalists on this site, on this channel. So yeah, bookmark us, check us out Mondays as well. So I guess the first thing we can start off with is this kid that stabbed, 22 people today in the morning, apparently. And it's been getting kind of scant media attention because, I don't know, it doesn't really, knifing spree doesn't really fit into the mainstream kind of agenda. You know, it doesn't really fit the mainstream talking points, so they give it a little mention, and then it kind of, that's kind of it. But, I guess the point here is like we've talked about before, how people think that you can control guns and you can control the violence. It's not about the guns that are doing the violence, and whether there's guns or not, there's going to be people in this society that are violent. No matter how utopian of a society you're in, there's always going to be a percentage of people that are violent. That's just a given. Now you add into this mix modern culture, peer pressure, modern medicines, cocktails of these medicines that they're starting to give these kids. I don't know what this kid was on. He definitely, obviously had some kind of mental problems.
Yep.
So,
he was probably under psychiatric evaluation as it was, and acted out with whatever weapon he could get his hands on, and then, what can we say? I mean, everything is just done for total control now, for no, priority being put for well-being at all. Like, nobody really gives a damn about mental health. It's more about, let's keep these kids in line. Let's bust them through Common Core. Learning be damned. Let's make them robots and just get them through the system. Our jobs depend on it, and that's what it's gotten to. And this is the backlash that started. It really came on the map in Columbine, and that was the warning call. And nothing has really changed since then. In fact, if anything, things have gotten 1,000 times worse for most kids. I mean, from what I've been reading about, I couldn't even imagine being in a high school right now. I'd want to get out of there as soon as I could.
Yeah, it's just like a microcosm of the bigger picture of what's going on in this country, and in most of the world. Western culture and these kind of ideologies that are built on these old ways are kind of becoming, more of a burden than they are helping people. It doesn't help as many people now that it burdens more people than it helps, more or less. So I guess that's why people are getting tired of it. People are starting to turn to things like our radio show, because we're always talking about how bad the government is. So, you can see the numbers, like the amount of people that are just getting tired of what's going on are just growing in leaps and bounds. Now, the other thing we're seeing is the mainstream, trying to derail it and belittle things and downplay things, like they're downplaying this knifing. It just goes to show that they're slipping, and it's just a matter of, as a society, can we become less violent, and can we help people with mental illness and help people that are at risk? We got to look and see, okay, who are the people that are at risk to be committing the violence, and see if we can help those people, man. Not put them on these cocktails of drugs, not throw them into mental institutions, not lock them up and throw them in jail, which is what happens a lot of time, or not push them out to the streets where they get beat up and killed by cops.
And the thing is that they don't want these people to have cures for their diseases. They really don't. Okay, they want them to be cogs in the system for life. That's why cancer is not cured. That's why the chemotherapy is prescribed when you have cancer, because what does it do? It kills the cancer and then makes your body ripe to have go into a remission. I mean, that's the thing, is you're going to get it again and again and again and back and forth, and there's never any real cures. The real cures have been known forever. That's
the thing about a lot of these quote unquote cures or medications or treatments or whatever, a lot of them are like what they used to do back in the day, where they would bleed people out or put leeches on people.
Yep.
I mean, it's almost like that same thing. It's self-defeating.
Right. And they know exactly what it is. They've done, you're talking about countless man-hours of research done to find out exactly what these things do, what they cost, what the potential there is there for profit. You can look at any medical, industry, and it really is for profit. We need to change the dynamic of particular industries that we all need and use. I love to always say that our economy needs to be geared more Maslowian, because we all need food and water and clothing and shelter and healthcare and education. These are more or less things that are just the glue of society. They're the basics. And we need to have these things, because we're such a wealthy country, just subsidize them so hard. No Obamacare needed. Just show up and you'll have all these things taken care of for you. Or do something similar to what Switzerland's doing, where they're giving everyone like $2,000 a month now.
Yeah, and we have this report that came out today on Mother Jones, and it basically is saying nobody cares what you think unless you're rich, and they went and they looked at a bunch of numbers. In fact, it was 1,779 policy outcomes over 2 decades. And basically, by those numbers, it showed that a growing and growing higher and higher amount of the policy decisions are basically lining up exactly with the mentality of the rich. And it showed that the interests of the public at large are largely being ignored, And it's just another symptom of this system.
Yep.
This quote unquote democracy.
And it was open declaration against public good when Citizens United was not, more or less overturned, and they allowed money to be speech and corporations to be people. Now, that opened up a can of worms, because once that happened, all that research that Bill Cooper did about everybody basically being a corporate person, which they more or less govern you in your name because you're a legal entity, and they trade you, and you have an ID number and a commodity number attached to your Social Security card, and it's also on your birth certificate. Well, you start to see that this is not a country. There's not another place in the world where there's borders that dictate the boundaries of it, that treat you like a company. Nowhere else. There's nowhere else in the world that does that. This is an unabridged company. It's a corporate takeover now coming out into the open, because before it was more profitable to keep the illusion up, and now it's less. And they're just peeling the illusion off layer by layer. They can't do it all at one time, or there'd be a revolt.
Yeah, and it's just become a burden to all of us, and it's, we don't really want to, carry the weight anymore. I mean, this Obamacare thing is just basically, in my opinion, it could very well be the straw that breaks the camel's back, when it goes into this premium spiral, because believe me, a lot of the people I talk to that are my age, that I assumed would the type of people that would, most likely sign up for Obamacare, they're like, what do you mean? There was a deadline?
Yep.
They're like, no one signed up for it, dude. There's a lot of people.
They don't know.
And
care.
The majority, we're probably going to see that the majority of the people that signed up for Obamacare are people that had pre-existing issues,
right,
and that are going to have very high medical costs. They're going to need meds right away, and so these people are going to be paying very little compared to what they're actually costing. And guess who's going to pay for it? Anyone that's paying a premium that's not sick. Everyone's premiums are going to go into this skyrise period where it's going to become to the point where they're either going to say, okay, it's either going to be the Democrats are going to put some reforms on it, or the Republicans are going to quote unquote try to repeal it. But the latest thing I've been seeing from the Republicans is replace it with their own version. It's like, why would anyone want a Republican version of Obamacare? That'd be even worse.
Let me tell you what's happening. This house of cards is about to fall down just simply from the cogs moving around in this machine and moving into a place where everything falls down. And I'll give you an example by that. We tried, and when I say we tried, I mean our government, not we, because I'm with the people, not our government. Our government tried to basically more or less replace Social Security, which they completely drained, by the way, converted into gold and shipped to China, on the backs of the young that were uninsured and were working underemployed jobs, usually 2 or 3 part-time jobs. They were making $20,000 or $30,000 a year, and they still wanted to squeeze out that extra $200 a month out of these guys. Why? Because they drained Social Security. Social Security is now completely insolvent. So insolvent that they literally cannot borrow money anymore at all. The dollar is dead. I don't know if you've heard, but there's actually 8 cities in the U.S. right now that cannot pay their police with the dollar. The police are requiring them to pay them in other currencies. Have you heard of this?
Oh, I haven't heard
There's
that.
8 communities, and one of them is in Utah, which is hilarious because that's a red state historically, which you'd think is, well, we're pro-America and blah, blah. Guess what? States' rights are coming back in a major way. There's going to be a lot of states issuing currencies soon because their own public employees they don't want to get paid with the dollar.
I think there's 10 initiatives in 10 different states for those states to actually secede. You know that? And there's
a bunch of states.
Yeah, there's 10 states that are trying to secede right now, at least. So, yeah, it's getting to that point, man, where I don't know. I think people are realizing it's getting there. We're getting there.
Yep. I mean, we're getting there. We're here already.
And that's why we know that there's going to be a lot more roadblocks that we're going to be facing. There's going to be a lot of instances, just like this Feinstein bill, that's going to try to undermine free speech. They're going to take shots. Are we going to let them take these shots and beat us, or are we going to win? Take these shots and absorb them, and then keep going. Use them as fuel.
Well, all these bills they keep passing, anytime they try to bring something into the courts, unless they're going to try to come swoop you up through NDAA and take you away, and no one ever sees you again because you're a citizen journalist, and you happen to post something they don't like. they can't do that to that many people without there being massive open resistance. And they can't do any of these trials against you and me, Nick, or anybody else who's part of the alternative media, because once they do that, it brings to the public's attention that they have managed to slide through and pass a law like that to begin with. Feinstein should really be kissing her career goodbye and hope she doesn't end up in prison the way things are looking right now with her open war against the CIA. How hard is it going to be to find dirt on her for them, who own everything and know everything already?
Oh no, yeah,
it's over. Like,
I mean,
what we're seeing
either,
now is
it's either theater or she's about to get screwed big time.
right.
So you'll know soon. If Feinstein actually does get taken down by these guys, then okay, maybe there is a real infight going on. If it turns out to just be theater, then we know it's all just part of this big scam.
Right.
You know, and I mean, who knows? I mean, let's face it. All these evil plans are going to have huge flaws in them, huge mistakes, because that's just the nature of government. They f things up all the time. They screw things up all the time. That's what they're best at. So to think that, I mean, come on, we're seeing these Secret Service dudes sleeping on the job, hooking up with prostitutes, not even covering their tracks.
It's looking like the Wolf of Wall Street.
These guys are just not caring.
Secret Service, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, let's face it. There very well could be a big rift in the machine, and it's up to us to find the split.
Well, the
and tear
morale
it
is
apart.
gone. The common man, even among the intelligence services now, even people at the NSA who are not up at the higher levels, everyone's disgruntled because everyone sees the way it's going. The glory days of the U.S., which we held propped up with our massive war machine, are grinding to a halt, and the reason for it is we've leveraged ourselves too far out. We're too spread out, and maybe it's all on purpose. Maybe everybody's conspiracy theories about this globalist underground cabal are true, and there's this small group of guys that wants us to fall, because once we do, well, guess what? China's already in the NWO. If anybody knows anything about it, they're all down for it. So that, to me, seems like the curtains is coming up now. Like, all these things people have been talking about for like 20 years, that it's taken these guys that long to position themselves into, well, now their own desperation. Really, they painted themselves into a corner at this point. Because, I don't know, maybe like 500 million people in the world know about what's going on, and it's growing every day exponentially, no matter what they do. And unless they shut the internet off, and everyone knows once that happens that martial law is imminent.
I think that's our big, our free speech, our internet rights, and we don't just want to fight for it. We want to make it too. We want to make our own internets and stuff like that. I think that's the key to it, because we're never going to get any action out of these politicians until it's too late. And then if you wait till it's too late, then guess what? You're still going to have a really bad time. And something bad's still going to happen. So, trying to persuade politicians to try to help us with this stuff and try to try to get them to save this stuff. It's not really going to happen. I don't think so. And if it does, it'll be too late. The politicians are always like 10 years behind the public. So by the time, we realize, oh, dude, Fukushima, like everyone's worried about Fukushima, and these guys are still sitting on their hands on this thing, basically.
Well, they're eating everything that's filtered out already. They're not eating any of this stuff. They're not exposing themselves. They're sitting inside rooms that have very advanced filtration technology. When they go in their cars, they even have cars that have filtration for their climate control. So they don't care, man. The elites don't care. They're already above all this petty environmental garbage. In fact, the more the world gets polluted, the more money these guys make, and then they separate more and more and more from the rest of us.
I mean, so what can we do, man? Is we rethink the way that we do things, and not fall for this pyramid scheme, man, and not let them control things like Monsanto. And there was a study that just came out yesterday that showed Monsanto's herbicide was found in about 30% of women's breast milk. Yeah. So this stuff's getting into these kids. There was other research that showed that there is presence of pesticides in the fetus before it's even born. Right. And then there's all this talk about autism and what's causing it. Why are the rates skyrocketing? Well, in my opinion, it's better to be safe than to be sorry. they still haven't found the exact cause of what's causing it. And they know, it's happening in the brain, it's happening in the womb. Yeah, they know that. They don't know what's causing it to happen. Obviously, it's something environmental.
But are they having these epidemics, these massive numbers, these triggered numbers in Europe, where they follow a completely different schedule, first and foremost? And secondly, if anyone knows about pharmaceuticals, those companies over there follow completely different purity standards than America does. Why? Because the people there get irate and they protest and they know what's up and they're informed and they're not fluoridated out of their mind and GMO'd out of their mind yet. They're trying very hard to get it over there, but the people are resisting.
Yeah, well, they even have U.S. diplomats basically lobbying for Monsanto. You saw that, right? It came out of WikiLeaks.
Yeah.
Out of some of the cables, some of these basically almost ambassadors for the U.S. in Europe were over there lobbying for Monsanto, and they're basically saying, they're basically threatening economic warfare. If you guys don't allow these genetically modified crops, there's going to be some problems.
Right.
There's going to be, you guys are going to have to pay for it.
Listen, if you have to push something hard, it's shit. Get it? So it is. It is. It's like you shouldn't have to sell. If it was so great and healthy and there were no side effects to it, then everybody would already they'd be clamoring for it. They'd want it. They'd never have to be pushed into something or goaded into this. People need to get that and understand that the food supply already, at this point, it's beyond toxic. It's beyond. It's cancerous. It's an inside joke among biotechnologists that our government is literally at war against its own people and is killing them on an active level. And all the biotechnologists from Europe and Latin America and Asia, they all know this when they come over. They don't drink our tap water. They don't eat the food here if it comes from anything in a package or anything from a drive-thru. They don't touch it. It's toxic sludge. It can't even legally be called food. Kentucky Fried Chicken's now KFC because it can't be called chicken legally anymore. So why would you eat it? What is it? You know what I mean? You're giving your kids that because you think you're giving them a wholesome meal. You just killed them. They now have a cancerous tumor in their colon. It's that point. It's at that point now where the food supply is at.
There was a story that went viral a couple days ago about how the Kroger grocery chain was basically misleading the consumers over this quote-unquote natural chicken that they were selling.
Right.
And the funny thing is that the chicken was called Simple Truth Chicken. And it's like almost like they're just throwing it into people's faces. And come to find out, the chicken was claimed to be humanely fed and all this stuff. And it turns out that that they were lying,
right.
And it just goes to show, man, like we can't trust these big corporate entities with our food supply because not only are they just like these GMO companies where they're totally trying to fight the labeling front. They don't want stuff being labeled, and they even try to prevent people from labeling their stuff non-GMO for a long time. So, these guys are actively trying to disguise their product in with all the other products, and they've done it such a good job of it that now they've become almost the majority of the products that we see in the store.
Right.
So, they're going to try all these tricks, and we've seen that Monsanto is buying up these organic food companies. There was a good article on TakePart.com about the most of these mainstream organic food companies. They're all owned by the same guys. They're all owned by the same big, Kellogg, these guys, all these big food companies. I don't know the names of them, but we all know who they are, Nestle and all these guys. They own most of these organic food brands too.
And
So no matter what you're doing, if you're still shopping at the mainstream store, you got to understand that you're buying from, you're supporting the beast. So you got to do your research, get the apps that help you decide on what to do, because a simple boycott is a good way to send a message to these companies. Right. And if enough people boycott, if 100,000, 200,000, 1 million people boycott a product, boycott a company, I mean it has an effect on their bottom line, and they'll rethink what they're doing.
Yep.
That's the only way we can't, I don't think petitioning these guys really works. Then again, it has been successful lately because of social media. And I'm starting to have a little bit of a new faith in at least direct petitioning, where you just basically get people to storm all of their emails, their phones, their social media, and that kind of petitioning.
Yeah.
That kind of stuff works. signing the paper and passing it along. I don't know. I've never actually seen one work, but maybe they do.
Well, the public, it's like you said, the U.S. government and then the public opinion. Those are the only two powers in the world that are worth anything. And the thing is that all these negative events happening are going to have backlashes. We will disarm and demilitarize our police force. Be assured of that. Be assured, if you're listening, that this process is already taking place as we speak. When a city goes bankrupt from police brutality escalations and starts shooting people to avoid those escalations, like we heard is going on in Albuquerque, that police department will soon be gutted, and everyone will be fired, and the city council along with them. They'll all be gone. Because you can't take that policy. You know, your officers, if they're not trained to deal with your population, get new officers. It has to be done. It can't be stood by and allowed to happen, because these are all Nazi tactics. It's like using food as a weapon. The weapon's been turned to the third world forever, but now because the third world's completely docile and conquered, they're going to turn that weapon inward on us, creating a fake drought in California now. They're making GMOs that suicide themselves, in 3 days if they're left out, so that they don't last for shit. You go to the supermarket and buy a full grocery bin, and it's rotted in 3 days. You just spent $300. These things are really happening right now. I mean, if you think you're going to be able to go to the supermarket and eat food on what you make now, wait another year, The hyperinflation is going to hit hard.
Yeah, and it's that's another thing that's, that when we have a monetary system that's in control of by unelected bureaucrats, these guys, these Fed chairman people, they're unelected, they're appointed people, they're hand chosen. So the president said, okay, I want this guy, and then I think the Senate or the House has to approve it. And normally there would be one guy, Ron Paul, in there saying, oh, this guy, talking all this crap. But now that doesn't happen anymore, that he's gone. So now it's just a bunch of hand-picked dudes that get to decide basically the fate of the world's money supply.
Right.
And they're not elected. They have no accountability. They never take credit for their actions. They don't take credit for the housing bubble. In fact, Bernanke was on tape 8 months before the housing bubble saying that the housing market looks great and that everything looks fine. It's like, dude, these guys are completely incompetent, yet they're in control of all of our money. I mean, whether your money's in the bank, whether your money's in cash, unless you have alternative assets.
You got to convert it, and that's what. Listen, this is what the people in those places that are not accepting the dollar. That's the gist of it. That's what they're getting at. We want to be paid in Bitcoin or silver or gold or anything else but the dollar. We want the Connecticut dollar. We want the Utah dollar. We want state-backed dollars that have gold. If I go to any bank in that state-run bank, I should be able to go in there with $1,300 in U.S. dollars and get an ounce of gold out right now. That's good anywhere in the world as a physical value to it. This is where it's coming to, because people in the know are telling people what's up. They're saying your 401k is garbage. You remember in 2008 when it tanked? Oh yeah, I remember. It's 5 years now. It's recovered. The stock market's strong again. Guess what's going to happen when this next fail hits and you're near retirement age? You know what I mean? It kills it. And it sometimes will never recover because we're riding these huge waves right now, these huge bubbles. And they're completely fake. Now, how do we know they're fake? Well, this is a great way to lead into this report about where the consumer credit is. Because everything that's riding on, basically, the economy is riding on fake debt. It's on debt that is on guys that have student loans that they can't get rid of it, even if they go bankrupt. Now, eventually, when all these debts have to be called in for that, you're going to have a million pissed off people with bachelor's degrees, and you're going to have the biggest class action lawsuit ever against the U.S. Treasury, where they're going to say, guess what? We want all these debts resolved if we go bankrupt. This can't follow us. Okay?
Yeah, that's insane that that you can't get that off of bankruptcy. Yeah, there was a report.
And car loans, what's going to happen if you lose your job? You lose your car. What happens when a car sits there? When the banknote gets pulled on, it's worthless. Nobody's going to go out and buy it in an auction. If I just lost my car, who's going to buy that auction car? It's not that. I mean, you see what's happening? They're squeezing out the drivers. good time to invest in bus companies or something, or trains, I don't know. Because the day of the private car ownership, it looks like it's going to end soon.
Yeah, man, too much. If you look at all these bombings that go off all around the place, and you got to think that this could be where this is stemming from. Look at how often do you see it? Car bomb goes off. Car bomb goes off. I mean, it's having cars in the hands of the public to the government. I guess that could be considered a threat.
It is. They're a weapon.
Yeah, because you're at the helm of a 10,000-pound, thing, and you can go real fast with it.
What if they took everyone's guns and then we just all got in our cars and started ramming into their vehicles?
I mean, we saw how paranoid they were when they shot that lady,
right,
in front of the White House because she was trying to do a U-turn because she was scared, and then they shot her like 5 times in the back.
Yep. With
her baby in the car.
Because their life's worth.
Because they scared the hell out of her.
More than yours.
It's just insane. I mean, the bully tactics are just getting out of control.
Right. Well, it's. And what I want to also ask is how do we have federal aid? We need to get rid of these federal police. Who are these guys? Why do we need them on lands? Why can't we have, if it's out on federal lands, why aren't forest rangers out there? Why do we have full military SWAT responses to a guy on a ranch?
Yeah, we have the Bureau of Land Management, which, by the way, manages something like 250 million acres of federally owned land. So I guess kind of the backstory of this whole thing is that this guy's family has basically been on that land since before it was federal land. You see what I mean? So he had kind of an exemption. So basically they stole his land a long time ago, and then they said you can still live on it and do your thing. And now they're coming in and they're saying, okay, now it's our turn. We're in control of this land, and they're trying to flex, and then you see a bunch of people out there, which are basically standing up to these guys. I mean, it's a good sign. It shows more of the trend that people are coming out and they're waking up.
And what do they want the land for? Why now the sudden interest from the government? Why do they want it now?
Well, they say it's to protect some tortoises or some turtles or something like that. Right. But I really don't see how grazing cows are a threat to turtles.
Well, they crush them and they step on them. But, I mean, yeah, that's ridiculous. Relocate the turtles. I don't know. What are you going to do? You protect every natural environment for every endangered species, and then where do we live? Soon they're going to funnel us into these megacities like Agenda 21 wants to do, and that's going to suck. I hope everyone likes living on top of like 50 million other people. Because, I mean, where we live now, it's already hairy, crowded, and it's even worse in L.A. And I can only imagine if they just started funneling everyone down to these huge megalopolises.
Oh, man, it wouldn't be pretty. I mean, we see what happens in big cities. That's where all the crime's at. That's where all the poverty's at. That's where all the homelessness is at. I mean, that's where you have a lot of these, just a lot of issues, man. A lot of illness, high rates of diabetes, too much smog, getting people sick. Everybody's eating GMOs because there's no local stuff available. I mean, it's not good. I mean, down here where we're at, very high rate of diabetes in National City, Chula Vista, because everybody's eating crappy food because we're in a food desert, man.
It's a food desert.
There's not even a place within like 10 miles of me here that I could even find food that's not basically fast food or mainstream.
Or GMO produce.
Yeah, basically.
Right, because a lot of the Mexican markets, even though they're great for prices, you look on there, if they're conventionally grown, you're like, yes! Because a lot of the times they'll have 5 number on front, and then that means it's GMOs. That's why it's so cheap. That's why it's like 29 cents a pound for like potatoes. And they're like made with, I don't know, the spliced genes of a bat's anus or something, and it allowed it to like grow inside of a hole inside concrete or something. I have no idea.
But, so the overall ownership of federal lands by the government is about 650 million acres.
So it's 2 an acre for everyone here. 2 acres each person.
2 an acre if you give every single man, woman, and child an acre of land. 2 acres of land.
Sounds fair.
And then even if you wanted to go further, you can dish it out to the people that are stuck in the that are basically in poverty, and then people can get like 5 acres or more, and then get rid of the Bureau of Land Management, get rid of this federal bureaucracy that controls all the natural resources. Right. Do we really want the government in control of our natural resources?
That's the dumbest idea ever.
The only thing that they're good at doing is turning the stuff into weapons.
Yep.
So no, I don't want the government in control of the natural resources. If there's a natural park, I think that that park should be communally owned by the people, not by the government. Yep. And they say, oh well, the people own the government. Not really, not exactly. They don't represent us. We talked about that a few minutes ago. They don't represent us anymore.
No, they don't even need. Listen, there was an article a guy wrote where they did a report that said, just based on vendors that are owned by Fortune 500 companies, meaning this, the top 500 corps, which are the government and the government itself, can already exist independently outside of the economy at large. They have enough of their supply chain, storage facilities, and everything automated, and enough people that are basically more or less company men and will do their bidding, that if tomorrow me, you, and everybody else that wasn't connected with one of these giant corps said, hey, fuck you, they'd be like, hey, fuck you back. We don't need you. You don't need us. Fuck off. We'll make a bunch of walled cities. You guys can live off the land. Piss off. That could happen.
I mean, I guess that would be the ideal way of doing it, where we just boot them and have a way to replace them, have our own alternative. It'd be nice. And eventually we'll probably get to that point, man. But we're getting fought at every angle with this Monsanto thing, man. They're fighting in every country. They're in court, and I don't even know how many lawsuits are against them right now, man. There's probably hundreds, if not thousands. They're fighting all these court battles. I can only imagine. What if we can get our hands on their actual legal costs? That'd be nice. I can only imagine what they're paying in legal fees, man, with all these lawyers. They probably have their own big team of lawyers anyway. But people are really, resisting against these guys. They're banning them in countries. I don't think we have to ban them. We just have to make them disappear. We don't need to ban them if they're gone,
Right.
So we just got to beat them. We got to make sure people know that they shouldn't be eating this stuff because it's poisoning everybody. And then the other big thing that people don't realize, the food is one thing. The groundwater, man, that's where all these pesticides end up in the groundwater and the stuff that we drink. And then what? Right. And then you're ingesting a bunch of pesticides in your fluoridated tap water. It's not very good.
In the States you're screwed no matter what, because what we saw tonight, I mean, that was an absolute tangerine sunset. It looked like a milky vanilla. It looked like Orange Julius was in the air. And it didn't look right, and it was just chemtrailed out, and the sun looked all weird and just shitty orange. And then it was just grayish pink all over in the sky, and there was just man, it was just screwed up. And they must be chemtrailing the hell out of our skies over here in SoCal. And so, yeah, GMOs are awesome. Eating organic food, step one. Then you need to get a water filter that even gets fluoride and even gets radiation out from your tap water. Step two, how much do those cost? They're like $500. But if you don't do it, you're getting it. You're drinking it. And then step three is, well, how do you avoid going outside and breathing in this crap, this boron and this bromium and this chromium and this human red blood cells and all these freaking fetus cells and all kinds of weird shit they have all flying up there in the chemtrails. You can't. That's the problem is. You can eat and drink as healthy as possible, but you're still getting that air. That's the thing, man. And it's all over. It's visible from space at this point.
Well, that's why you have to just, to avoid all this stuff. Superbugs. I think superbugs are one of the biggest threats to humanity that is definitely man caused.
Yep.
Because we've overused antibiotics, we've overused antibacterial stuff. We've overused medications.
And we've been living on borrowed time on this vaccine schedule too, because if anybody wonders why there's problems with vaccines now, well, it's because they're really having to push the limit. These viruses are starting to mutate at a really, really exponential level to the point now where they're vaccinating newborns for Hep B. I've never even heard of this being done. and don't understand why they do it. And I think it's insane now that children are having, upwards of 40 or 50 shots, when me and you, we probably had 13 spaced over the first 4 years of our lives. And we probably had nothing when we were born. Nothing day of birth. Nothing probably for 2 or 3 weeks at least.
Yeah, man, and the other thing is that if these vaccines are preventing all the stuff they say, that basically guarantees the life of the pharmaceutical industries that make these things.
Absolutely.
So I mean, if you did away with that, no more vaccines, who knows what would happen, man? They haven't had that much long-term study on these vaccines and what happens when they try to fully exterminate a virus. Like, what if that virus also had another link in the food chain that it played an essential role in? We don't know that. We don't know. So when we do completely eradicate the earth of the Ebola virus or of malaria or whatever, we don't know if there's going to be an effect by removing that out of the food chain or not.
And you never will. Listen, they're going to try to now geoengineer vaccines into the chemtrails, vaccinate you by force. But what would that do? What happens when they spray these pesticides over a field? A few of them will survive, and not only survive, but thrive in it. And they become super weeds, and they eat a whole field, and they can't kill them except to manually go out there and pull them out. Same thing will happen with this vaccination worldwide. You'll get in response these superbugs, like you said. They will be immune to everything, and they'll breed prodigiously with no competition because all the other members of their ilk, of their species, have been killed already. So whatever food supply they were existing on, which was microscopic, they're going to have unfettered access to. I mean, it doesn't take rocket science to understand that hygiene is going to play a bigger role than you'd ever imagine in the eradication of all of this stuff. When we started getting plumbing, indoor plumbing, and we started getting Department of Sanitation and trash refuse collection and all of these things, even disinfectants and sterilization of instruments and dishware, these things cut down so dramatically in conjunction with vaccines that these ignoramuses thought it was only the vaccines.
Well, that's what they try to say.
And they sold it to the public, when in fact the vaccines played only a part of the role, and in fact opened us up for superbugs later.
Yeah, and also this antibacterial soap is also leading to the development of superbugs.
Yes, it is.
And you see it at every level of life. When you try to eradicate something like be it a gopher in your yard, when you're trying to get rid of that thing, it's like impossible, right?
Right.
That's because his ancestors have been mastering those arts for thousands and thousands of years.
There's a lot of dead gophers in the past.
So I went down to Mexico a couple years ago, right? And we're talking about 85 degrees at night, 95 degrees, rain every day, mosquitoes galore, dude. I must have got literally about 500 mosquito bites while I was down there. And I was using this mosquito spray.
DDT?
I don't know which one it was, but it was nasty smelling.
Dow or something.
And I was like using this stuff, and guess what? I was still getting bit. And then, I was at a friend's house, and all their windows didn't have a screen on it. I'm like, dude, why don't your windows have screens? And why are your windows open, dude? I'm like, there's mosquitoes everywhere, bro. And it's like, they weren't getting bit. I'm like, how are you guys not getting bit? I'm like offering them spray and stuff. They're like, oh, no thanks. They didn't want the spray. I'm like, how are these guys not getting bit? And I'm realizing, like, okay, it's got to be either something in their diet or something in their blood.
Yeah.
That their ancestors have evolved from living in these jungle conditions a long time and dealing with mosquitoes for thousands of years. You build up that those kind of deterrents in your blood because your body's always fighting. It's always a battle between nature and
the organism
and your body.
Itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Your environment and your survival are always at odds.
Exactly. So the other
it's
thing,
a Southern American thing that nobody has screens. They look. I remember that's funny you say that, Nick, about Mexico because down in Peru, same thing. And you go, "Where's the screens?" They look at you like, "What are you talking about? What if insects get in?" So what? And I'm all, "What if they bug you? Just swat them."
And so the other thing that is detrimental about vaccines and modern medicine in general is, just like you were saying, these kids between the ages of between being born and 4 years old, they get how many shots, how many vaccines? Now that what that tells you is that there's a lot of people that don't have this natural immunity, man, and that's a problem because that makes your gene pool very, very vulnerable. If you get one big superbug that mutates, it could be the flu virus, it could be HIV. Because this is the thing: if the flu were as deadly as HIV, we'd all be dead.
Right.
Almost all of us would be dead.
Yep.
Now the thing about HIV is it's very hard to transfer it. You can't just sneeze on someone and then they catch it. You can't just catch it from a doorknob, and you can't just catch it from a toilet. It has to actually be the bodily fluid being put into the other body. It has to stay at the temperature too. Fluctuating temperature by only 5 degrees kills it. So when we have a mutation, man, and we're throwing all these drugs at HIV, this is what really scares me. And this is the thing about HIV that most people don't know. But I have a somewhat of a background in biotechnology, so I learned about HIV, and the reason why HIV is so hard to treat is because it'll literally mutate in a day. Because what happens is it reproduces so quickly, and there's so many generations that like within one day it'll be resistant to the medicine you're throwing at it. That's why people on AIDS a lot of times they'll be on 20, 30 medicines. You know what I mean? Because there's so many different mutations that they're fighting. Now, if AIDS ever mutated to the point where it was easily transferable, like the flu, we're done.
Right.
And we're that weak because nobody has immunity to it.
Yep,
We don't have a strong natural immunity to the flu. Our immunity to the flu is weak because it depends on vaccination.
And I believe that the malicious elite at the top understand that, and that we've knocked natural selection out of the mix for humanity, and we've kind of cultivated this massive herd, and unfortunately, because the herd's never been thinned out for maybe 3 or 4 generations due to, well, man, things just working kind of well after World War II, and there being generally more or less this peace between the superpowers. Of course, there's been nonstop proxy wars, but more or less,
there hasn't been that much widespread like what happened with World War II.
There hasn't been anything that's knocked out a lot of people and that's kind of righted the ship for a while, and that's where we're starting to see that. I think the elite understand this. They're doing everything in their power to have soft eugenics go through. It's not working fast enough, so they're going to go to plan B, which is what we're seeing now, economic meltdown, and let everyone kind of off themselves, right? Everyone go into a panic situation and fight for the food, and then they'll come out of their little hidey holes in a few years.
Yeah, and it's just like any dystopian that you watch, man. And it's because these people that write dystopians kind of understand the way people act, and you can see it if you're ever in any disaster situation. For instance, let's say with Hurricane Katrina, we saw the debacle down there, mutiny by the police, people going around raping people. I mean, it was total mutiny down there, total chaos, and the cops became the bad guys. Yeah. I mean, they abandoned ship or they were screwing people over. And I mean, that's just how it was. And on this financial system built on this very, very, questionable scheme that it's built on, which is just a gigantic, gigantic Ponzi scheme. And it's being enforced by U.S. military. It's being enforced down the barrel of a tank or down the barrel of a drone, like we did in Libya, or being done covertly like we're doing in Syria and Ukraine. So, it's just they're trying to keep the agreement in place that Nixon signed, that basically makes the U.S. the reserve currency of the world. And as long as they can hold that, then they can hold on to this whole thing.
But it's only lasted for 41 years. It was 73 when it was signed, concurrently, of course, with a similar bill that made insurance private for healthcare. It before was a nominal fee you'd pay the government, and when I mean nominal, I'm talking about like $5, like just to pay for the administration. And then you went to the doctor and you paid the damn doctor. You paid him a good amount of money, but it wasn't expensive.
It wasn't ridiculous.
And he'd come to you if you couldn't make it.
You were talking about pre-70s healthcare.
Yeah, pre-70s healthcare.
It was like fairly priced. It's like going down to Mexico and getting care.
Exactly. Like Ron Paul used to be a doctor, and he said, people came for their checkup for their kids, and it was $5 without insurance. Do you know what I mean? A copay. Then what they do is bill them $500 and 100 other dudes copaid on their monthly premium, even if they didn't go to the doctor. The way it works is stupid. We got to take it back to what it was. And if you can't pay that, yeah, we're going to have free healthcare. Free. If you need it, we got you. You know what I mean?
Exactly, man. Like the genuinely, impoverished people, the rest of the community should be taking care of those people until they can get on their feet.
Right.
And it shouldn't be a political issue. It shouldn't be like, oh, well, the Republicans are blaming welfare and then the Democrats are defending it. Well, no, you're both wrong because even the welfare the way it is completely unsustainable. And most of the reforms that these jokers try to make on the entitlements make them even more unsustainable. They try to put them further into debt. It's like you guys aren't making any sense. It's the bureaucracy that's the problem. That is the bureaucracy is the parasite on what would be a free world, but we have this bureaucracy, this hierarchy, this fascism that basically controls and basically just robs everybody blind. They take everybody's money.
And we have to have mass civil disobedience on this level. We need to have everybody realize that the Internal Revenue Service is it's a company that's coming to collect a bill that they say that you owe to a government that no longer exists and hasn't existed in over 100 years. They can't prove it exists. They can't prove you owe money. If you try to tell them that you don't owe money, there's nothing they can do about it, especially if everybody decided they don't owe money all at the same time. They would never be able to get the court to move.
They can only throw so many people in prison before they're
overfull. And they can't throw people in prison because once one person realizes what's going on, which is anything not going to your state government is illegitimate completely. It doesn't go to anything you'll ever use ever. It goes only to black budget projects. That's it. That's the only reason it exists. And it's only there to kill people around the world so you can enjoy a completely fake materialistic lifestyle that has zero sustainability and is dying as we speak.
I think without this bogus monetary system, we'd have a more fruitful life. We really would. We'd have better lives. We'd have happier lives. And yeah, maybe it wouldn't be as much of a material world because we wouldn't have this artificial grip over the world monetary system. Because right now, basically, people in third world countries, we're kind of living a fancy lifestyle off of their backs because they're forced into using the dollar system. People in the Philippines are working to keep us living nice.
Of course,
and it's not that we can't still live nice, but the fact is that we're committing injustices and we're committing violence, we're committing genocide, we're committing murder just to keep this stuff in place. And just because it can arguably keep some people having a better lifestyle and other people won't, doesn't give us the moral authority to kill people for it.
But what is the cost? And just answer that. What is the cost to your soul? If you're someone who went to college and then went on to work at a big global corporation, and even if you're a business account executive making $120,000 a year or something like in that range, and you're a guy and you vote, and you're just a Joe Schmo American, you're upper middle class, you kind of made it. What are you doing? You're advancing the agenda of this global corporateocracy where once you're not employed with this megacorp on some certain level, you have zero worth at all. Once they get these chips in you and you don't play the game on their system, you're not in it anymore. And eventually they'll get all the rest of the people to go ahead and allow them to hunt everyone down who's not on the system. They're going to make a grid inside a grid, and it's a grid you can't get off, and it's a grid you're attached to from life. It is the Matrix.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're definitely living in a real Matrix. It's one that's very hard to escape. It's if you have obligations here, it's actually really hard to leave this country. If you're a guy with a child and you're behind on your child support, they revoke your passport, man.
Yep.
They'll take your passport away for multiple reasons, and then you're trapped here, and then it becomes a prison. And then you got nowhere to run to.
Yep.
And unfortunately, these same forms of government and these same ideas are kind of perpetuated throughout the whole world anyway. So no matter where you go, it's a ticking time bomb. It's a government that eventually is going to do some dumb things. It's going to cause economic havoc, and then there's going to be a revolution, and then there's going to be a whole new set of dudes that do the same exact thing. It's like no matter whatever country you go to, no matter what point in time in history you want to go, unless you go to places that didn't essentially have governments, then you're going to see the same cycle over and over again. And it's like, when the hell is humanity going to realize it?
So they're working on it right now.
Look at Egypt, dude. Let me one last thing before I finish this.
Yeah.
Look at Egypt, dude. How old is that culture? They go back like thousands and thousands and thousands of years, right? They had, pharaohs and all this stuff. And what did they just do? They just had a revolution, and then they replaced the figurehead with another dictator.
And now it's a military junta.
And look, it's like, why the hell haven't we learned our lesson from this yet, dude? What the hell is going on?
Most people there now are scared shitless that the military is going to crack down on any dissident group of any sort against their rule. Now, their rule is now absolute, a la martial law forever. Now, that may last 2 years, 3 years, 5 years before they'll have a real open election again. But you can be sure that the coup worked. I mean, the military took over, they kicked out the Muslim Brotherhood. Somebody was happy and somebody got rich.
Well, if the military is in charge, then the U.S. government's happy.
Right.
We hadn't built that thing all for them.
So some the silly thing is that the Muslim Brotherhood has ties to the White House, whereas the military-industrial complex, of course, wants the military itself to be the power. So maybe there's a fracture within our own false two shadow governments fighting each other. I have no idea. But what I wanted to get to, my point was this, man. When does it end? And when does it stop? And even though Egypt had this happening for 5,000 years and so on and so forth, the thing is this: there's 3 end games, and the one that's leading down it looks like it's going to happen where the elitists, the billionaires, are going to go transhuman, and they're going to basically, what they're going to do is genetically engineer their heirs, their children. And they're going to be so advanced that we can't compete. And they're going to literally be space-aged within one generation, and then they'll leave. They'll literally leave in spaceships. Okay, the second thing is this. Put all decision-making in the hands of AI, a la Terminator, but make them follow Asimov's 3 rules or something of that nature so that they don't kill us. Because they can rule perfectly in the most logical sense, which is meaning that it's the best for the public good. Within parameters, and it's going to have to be in a tight algorithm. You can't give them like full autonomy. And the third way, and this is the wet dream for everybody. Everybody should get a wet dream thinking about this world. Tested tech's just unleashed, and we all have as much power as we want for anything we want. And that just means that education, healthcare, and the economy all become free and open source. We can do whatever we'd like, follow our passions forever. Have as many children as feasible, because why? We'll spread out to the stars. And this will just be the beginning.
Yeah, man. I mean, it's pretty logical, you know. We're already seeing the automation now. And remember when Snowden first came out with these leaks? By the way, on the antimedia.org, we have a nice compilation of all the Snowden leaks and all the capabilities of the NSA. So if you want to hide your ass online, you should read that list so you can kind of get around as much as you can. Of course, I'm sure that they probably have a way around almost everything. In fact, I saw some speculation that they were behind this SSL leak too, that it may have been an NSA creation so that they can get access to all the sites. But I think it's like we're seeing these automations take place. The guy came out and said that he wanted to see, he was like, well, we wouldn't have that problem with Snowden if it was all done by computers, would we? You know what I mean? So they're doing that. They're setting up all these drones that have AI that are autonomous drones. We talk about these things all the time. This is really, I think, one of the biggest threats from the government side of things. I mean, the superbugs, I think, are really probably the biggest threat to humanity. But from the government, man, I think it's these autonomous drones that are really going to start replacing a lot of the military and a lot of the police. And I mean, this RoboCop stuff is going to become reality, where they're just going to be carrying out orders, and there's going to be no conscience there. I mean, even these boneheaded cops have some sort of a conscience deep down, and a lot of them have more of a conscience, like Dorner did, you know. But sooner or later, man, if we're not really careful, we're going to end up with this situation that's not going to be pretty. Thank you guys for tuning in, man. We'll see you guys Friday. Tune in to the Levon Show. We'll see you on Monday.
I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go